Hey guys, I wanted to give you a quick video on how to use NSwag Studio, Desktop Studio, to generate a C# .NET Core 3.3.1 to 2.1 clients, so you don't have to write the same code twice. So in a scenario where you have a front-end web project talking to a web API project, sometimes in the front end project, you have some controllers, and those controllers there will call the backend API controllers. In this case, we just have the boilerplate templates from Microsoft .NET Core, which is Weather Forecast 1. And generally, you have to write the kind of the same code twice because you're gonna call some data either from JavaScript, C# if it's Blazor. And you're gonna call from here, like the home controller will call out say, hey, I need some weather over to here, right? And you're gonna have to make a function in there, or just that calls an API, and then you're gonna have to create some return types to return the types and serialize, deserialize, like all that stuff, right? So to make things easy, if you're using .NET Core, and you're using Swagger or NSwag Swashbuckle, you can download the NSwag Desktop Studio, which is free. I'll put a link in the description, and you can generate a client. And when you have that client, if you just stick it here in the front end, you really don't have to write any middleware code to communicate with your API. You would just regenerate a client if you've made some controller changes over on the API. So for now, let's just we'll add a folder in here, and we'll call it service. Okay, and then we'll add a new empty file, and we're gonna say API service.cs, and we'll just clean it up with CodeMade. Okay, so we have that, right? So we want to write all this stuff in here, inject it if we need to, create interfaces if we need to. I have this API project, right? So I'm going to run this. I'll just show you what we got in it so far from the boilerplate. So it goes to the root of Swagger, which is, I think, about 5 lines of code you can add to any project. Let me quickly show you that. Solution Explorer startup, 1 in configure services, and these 3 if you for the using statement, or the request HTTP request pipeline section, which is configure. And those come from a NuGet package called Swashbuckle ASP.NET Core. Okay, so if you take a look at this, this is the one that .NET Core and Microsoft give you in this template, weather forecasts. So if you just hit try it out and execute, it'll give you back these items, right? So I made a couple extra ones here. So if I cancel, how do you collapse? Okay, I made get hottest day and get coolest day. And this just returns a single item. If I go execute here, gives you back a sweltering, well, in that range of days, 6, not sure why it's saying sweltering is -9, but that's okay. So let's say get hottest day. Let's see what that does. Try it out. And there, so that is actually sweltering, but anyways. Oh, I guess summary is probably the week summary or something. I'm just getting back 1, so. So we have 47, pretty hot in Celsius, right? Let's go cancel here, cancel. So these are my controller methods. I gave this one a name, even though it's pointed to a different method. These I gave route names, get route names of that, and then this name thing here is what when you use NSwag Studio, it will make the function name called that. Among other things, the name is used for, but that's why I added it here. And then you have the coolest day one. So if you download NSwag Studio, you can pick different outputs. So I'm going to pick 3.1. And where you get this definition URL is if you go up here, click this, just copy this guy here, and we're going to put it in here. So create local copy, which gives you this JSON file. And then I've already generated it, but just to show you, generate outputs, it will make this file. So I'm going to copy that, go back over to this guy here. We can stop this. We only needed it running to generate the client. I'm going to replace everything here. Now, you're going to get this stuff here where it says, I don't know what weather forecast is. So there's two options in NSwag Studio. One for it to generate the DTOs itself, but you don't necessarily want that. You probably keep your DTOs in a separate project or class files or whatnot. So if I do control period on this guy here, for now, you wouldn't do this in a production scenario where you add a reference to, or not often, to your API, but just to show you that you can add a reference and it would be good. But the main thing here is, I believe, when you add the reference, which is fine. So it added a reference and it added a using, which is right here. So we got that reference added. So if we delete all this and paste it in again, it still is there. So because it added the project reference, but it didn't add the using statement. So to add using statements in your client output generation, you go to the very top and we're going to say, what was it called? Let me just see what it was called. We called it app-test.api. So if we go back here, I'm going to say app-test.api, and you just comma delimit other ones that you want to add. So I'm going to say generate outputs. And the cool thing about this is kind of when you're done, you can save this. Like when you close it, it'll say, hey, do you want to save like all this work you've done in the settings and whatnot? And it actually outputs into a JSON or a YAML file that you can run in a pipeline. Like if you wanted to trigger automatic web client generation, or even as a startup task, or the first time you open the project, or you could run an npm command, and it's pretty awesome stuff. So let's just go back here. I copied, and I'll select all, get rid of it, paste. We shouldn't see any using statements here. Yeah, so it's all good because what it did was it put this using at the top. So there's our API service. Now, if we're, let's say, in home controller, and we wanted to say, just make a new public iAction result of, let's say, a list of weather, sorry, public async task iAction result of list of weather forecast. Okay. Now we want to Okay, so we want to say, let's first make the API. So we're going to say bar API equals apptest.services.API service new HTTP client. Now you could just inject the iHTTP client factory if you're using those dependency injections on startup, but let's just use this for sake of ease. Okay. Oh, right. It's .client. I believe. API service.client. What was it called over here? Apptest.service, and it creates a client. Service.client. Okay, so there we have that. And what we can do here is return API dot, look at this, get coolest day async, or get hottest day async. So all this stuff was generated. You don't have to write any code yourself. That file will generate it all. And so this wants to return a, I believe, a task of weather forecast. So let's just do that. And that's kind of it. So yeah, I hope you guys found this useful. If you have a web API project and you don't want to really write any code at all to communicate with that API, and it's using open API standards, aka Swagger, you can use the NSwag Studio, Desktop Studio, to generate C# and even a TypeScript client for numerous different versions of .NET and .NET Core. Yeah, so I hope you guys found that useful. Save a lot of time, and don't write code twice, just automatically generate this stuff. And the other cool thing I didn't mention, but like if you had an overload to the get hottest day that also took a parameter of an ID, it would still be called the same thing, but it would actually make like an overload. So you could pass in a long or a int or whatever. It would be the same function name, which is awesome. And then you see how it's even got the cancellation tokens, which is awesome. So if, especially in a Blazor server-side or client-side application, if someone clicked canceled and you wanted to send that cancellation token before the data is returned, if it's a big query or whatnot, it's all baked right into the HTTP client. Yeah, so I hope you guys found this useful, how to generate a complete C# client for .NET Core 3.1 if you're using OpenAPI, Swagger, and a lot of other companies online offer public APIs that are hosted in Swagger OpenAPI standards. So you could potentially just download NSwag, generate your client, and just throw it into a project, and now you're cooking with gas and you're communicating with that API without writing any of this serialized, deserialized, try, catch, like any of that. So hope you guys found that useful, and have a great day.